All right, so I'll say good morning. Good morning, and let us begin a beautiful daf ahead of us today. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning shir. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Tammuz, Daniel and Batsheva Pava of Hashmonaim, Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shuman Drashos this month in commemoration of the Yahrzeit of their father, Rabbi Shlomo ben Yehuda Aryeh Vegh of Philadelphia, on the occasion of his first Yahrzeit. Rabbi Shlomo was a child survivor of Aushwitz, muvhak of Reb Michel Ber Weismendel. He left 90 plus descendants who are yireh Shamaim. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, his neshama will have an aliya and the family a neshama. But with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Lamed Hey, a short daf, but packed with incredible and fascinating, riveting and transformative information. So we are starting on Lamed Aleph, base 34b at the two dots. Ze Omer Shalavosai. So we'll say, so this is the much anticipated, long awaited sugya that we've actually been referencing for the last number of days, and now Meretz Hashem we will be zocheh to begin to see it inside. So here we go. So Zeh Omer Shalavosai, V'Zeh Omer Shalavosai. Reuven says this object. Now, by the way, whatever the Zeh is, the Rashbam points out over here, bein sfina, bein bekarka, it doesn't really matter what the object is, right? So whether the object is a boat, like we saw in yesterday's daf, whether the object is land, so the object itself is irrelevant. So again, we'll call it land even just to keep it easy. So Reuven says, or actually let's keep it a boat because it actually keeps it a little bit easier. So Reuven says, the boat belongs to me. Shimon says, the boat belongs to me. So what is the halacha? So Amrav Nachman called the alim gvar. So literally again, called the alim gvar means whoever is stronger will win. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Zemer Shalavos Zemer Rashbam, 4 lines from the bottom, Bein Besina, Bein Bekarko, Ve'in Eidos V'chazaka L'zeh Yoser Mizeh. The idea over here is neither of the parties has a definitive claim. So neither has a chazaka, nor does either have any kind of eidos. So Reuven says the boat belongs to me. Shimon says the boat belongs to me. Again, both are claiming complete ownership. Neither have eidos and neither have chazaka. So what do you do? So Rav Nachman wrote his famous position of Rav Nachman, Kol da'olim gvar. Literally translated, whoever is stronger wins. Essentially, what this means is Beis says, listen, you guys have to figure this out. We have absolutely no ability. There's no proof over here. There's no eidos. There's no chazaka. There's nothing for us to do over here. Whoever is stronger wins. Now, say it happens to be, so this, I put this out on the chat yesterday. This was the third page of the PDF that I posted on the chat yesterday. There happens to be a fascinating rush. Now, before we go on, if you don't mind, so one time I'm going to tell you, if you haven't printed it out, you can look on your phone. Right? So again, you can look in that PDF. That was the third page yesterday. So this is just an important piece from the Rush. And the Rush writes as follows. He says, Ze Omer Shalavosai v'Ze Omer Shalavosai, Amrav Nachman Kol Dalam Gvar. So the Rush, Rabbeinu Asher, remember again the Rush, one of the early codifiers of halacha. So the Rush writes as follows. He says, Hai Kol Dalam Gvar, Dinohu. The chol mi shegavar yado bepam rishona hu shalo at shiyavi chaveiro raya. So I'll say, so this is very important. Remember, I referenced this yesterday. What is called the olim gvar? Right? When Rav Nachman says this, right, that whoever is stronger wins. What is that? Is that a psak halacha? Right? Is that a psak, or is that a siluk, or is that a removal? In other words, we'll say two different ways to look at it. The Pashtus is something called Dalam Gvar Bezin is saying, you know what? Not our problem. You guys duke it out. Whatever happens. Comes along the Rush. The Rush says, no, this is a din. This is a halacha. And what's the halacha? What does the halacha say? The halacha says, Reuben and Shimon, you guys duke it out. Whoever wins, right? Whoever is stronger and wins, that in halacha says you're the owner. And you remain the owner up until the point that the other party could go ahead and furnish proof that it's his. Now, this is very important. See, I will say, what would be the nafkamina between saying that kol da alam gvar is a din, is a halacha, versus a siluk, versus a removal? What would be the nafkamina? So, I'm sorry? So first you get more information, but even, we'll get to that in just a second, back and forth. In other words, let's play this out for just a second, right? Reuben is stronger than Shimon, so Reuben takes possession of the boat. Does Shimon have a right tomorrow to go and overpower Reuben and take the boat back? See, if it's a siluk, right? If Bezin is not involved, whatever. Bezin is like, guys, you know what? It's not our problem. This is between the two of you. If on the other hand it's a psak halacha, the psak halacha says, no. Kol Dalam Gvar says, whoever is stronger the first time and gets possession, so let's say it's Reuven, now you're in possession. The only way to change that is if Shimon were to actually come along and furnish some type of proof. So again, that's what the Rosh is saying. Hai Kol Dalam Gvar dinohu. The Rosh says, this psak of Kol Dalam Gvar, this is a psak halacha. This is a psak halacha. Whoever wins the first time, I'm using the word win, right? Whoever is more powerful the first time and therefore takes possession of the object belongs to him. Ad shiyavi chavero raya. Until his friend brings a proof. So in other words, let's say Reuven is the stronger one, so Reuven gets the boat. That boat, says the Rosh, remains with Reuven until Shimon could come along and furnish proof. Now, of course, if Shimon could bring proof that it belongs to him, that's absolutely fine. But until that point, Shimon doesn't have the right to use strong arm tactics, to go ahead and get the boat back. Once Reuven gets it, it's his. The chozman shelo yavi raya af im tigaver yado lo shafkino lein la'afuke minei. So this is incredible. The Rosh says, until Shimon could furnish proof, even if Shimon becomes stronger than Reuven, so now Shimon has the ability to extract the boat by force. The Rosh says, we do not allow Shimon to do that. So look what he writes. He says, "Delo mistaber sheyetaknu chachamim shekol yimeim b'meriva umachlokes." This is so beautiful. The Rosh says it's impossible to think that Chazal would create an enactment that allows people to be in a constant state of strife and struggle every single day, right? Can you imagine? You wake up in the morning, who's going to be stronger today, Reuven or Shimon, right? So today Reuven got the boat, tomorrow Shimon is going to be stronger, and the next day it's going to be Reuven. The Rosh said it doesn't make any sense that Chazal would be attacking something like that. Umachlokas hayom yigbar zeh umachar chavero. Right? Today is Reuven stronger, tomorrow Shimon. Ella chachamim pasku kol da'alim bepam hazos gavar. Rather, again, says the Rosh, Kol da'alim gvar is a psak halacha. It's a psak halacha. Right? It is a psak halacha. And therefore, I will say, in the I'm reading in the Rosh, which is the PDF that I sent out yesterday, in the chat yesterday, the third page. So we'll say, so rather, again, Kol da'alim gvar is a psak halacha that says, whoever is strongest the first time gets it, and the object remains with that person until the other party could furnish proof. Physical strength is not enough to give it to the other party. Only actual proof is enough to go ahead and give it to Shimon. And I will say, not only that, the Rosh says, let's say Shimon were to come, right? Let's say, so this happens on a Tuesday, right? So Reuven gets the boat. Wednesday, Shimon comes along and he overpowers Reuven and takes it back. The Rosh says, we will not let Shimon use it. Will not let Shimon use it. That's not the way Kol da'alim gvar works. Now, by the way, says the Rosh, what is the logic? What is the logic of this? And this is fascinating. He says, "V'samchu al zeh." Chazal relied on this. So I'll say. So first of all, here's what we know. We know there's only one owner, right? In this, the pashtus, there's only one owner. The one who is the true owner, we are confident over time will bring proof. He'll bring proof. V'od misha din imo yimsar nafsho lahamid shalo biyado mimashe yimsar ha'acher ligzol. Furthermore, I'm going to say there are two things the Rosh says. The reason why Kol da'alim gvar works is for two reasons. Number one, we're confident that the one who's the actual owner, he's going to bring a proof at some point in time that the ownership is actually his. Number two, even just from a physical exertion perspective, I will say, the real owner is going to exert himself more to retain control over his object than the one who's not the owner. Va'od yomar ma batsa she'emsar nafshi v'hayom olamachar yavi raya v'yosena miyadi. Furthermore, again, the one who's not the owner is going to say, what's the point? I should struggle to go out and get the object. Then what's going to happen? At some point in time, the real owner is going to furnish proof, and he's going to take it back from me anyway. It's not worth the exertion. So I will say, so this is a very important Rosh. That's why I wanted you to see it inside again, page 3 of the PDF that I sent you yesterday. So again, I will say the Rosh teaching us that the concept of Kol da'alim gvar is a psak din. It's a ruling of Beis Din. It's not a siluk. It's not a removal of, it's not Beis Din removing itself. If Beis Din saying, listen, there's no proof, guys, duke it out, whoever is strong gets possession of the object, and Allah says, you're the owner. The Allah says, you are the owner. Obviously, Reuven takes it, right? Reuven gets it, he's stronger. If Shimon brings proof, then of course Shimon could extract it. but Shimon cannot go ahead and use strength to extract it the next day. Once Kol Dalam Gvar is settled, then Reuven is the actual owner until Shimon can furnish proof and turn this around. Incredible. So I'll say this is the pshat of the Rosh. I just want to point out, we don't really have time, this is a raging machlokes. So there is another school of thought. And the other school of thought is that no, this is not a psak, this is a siluk. This is based in saying we're not involved. We're not involved. I will say once again, if we're not involved, then Reuven takes control of the boat on Tuesday, and then what happens? Shimon decides, he's going to try to get it back on Wednesday, and he gets it back. It could work. But this is the rush. All right, so now back to the Gemara. So the Gemara says like this. Rav Nachman Paskins Kol Dalam Gvar asks the Gemara, last line of Lamed Daled Lamed Beis, Umayshna Mishtei Shtaros Hayotzim Yom Echad. Now, why is this any different than the case of two shtaros that appear on the same day? Now, what's this case? Rashi said, look at the Rashbam, that's Rashbam on the page. He says, "Ma'ishna mishnei shtaros hayosim lefanenu asada achal shal Reuven shakasav shtar matana l'Shimon u'shtar matana l'Levi." So I'll say, here's the case, right? So you have two, right? Reuven and Shimon both appear with Beis Din with the shtar matana, document of a gift, saying that we'll call it Yaakov conveyed property to them. Yaakov conveyed property, and both of the shtaros are dated on the same exact day. They're both dated on the same exact day. Both dated on the same exact day. So what's the pshat, right? So in other words, what's the halach over here? So we'll say, so now understand, Reuven and Shimon both walk into Beis Din with the same document, right? Both claiming that they are the owner of this property, and both documents have the same date. Now, the Rashbam points out, by the way, even if there's edus to say that Reuven got his document in the morning and Shimon got his document in the afternoon, that's irrelevant, right? Why is it irrelevant? Because halacha mes, when it comes to documents, we look at the calendrical date. We don't care about the time of day. That doesn't. The Rashbam points out the only place where they were makbid to write the time of day in the shtar was in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Yirakodesh, they used to write the time of day in the shtar itself. Otherwise, again, we look at the dates. So what happens, Rabbi say, Reuven and Shimon both walk into Beis Din, and they both have a shtar matana claiming that they received property from Yaakov, and both documents have the same date. So who's the owner of the property? So Lamed Hamad Aleph, what's talacha? The Rav Amar Yachloku. Rav says they split it. Right? Reuven and Shimon split a piece of property. Shmuel says Shuda the Daini. Shmuel says Shuda the Daini means judicial discretion or judicial assessment. That the Dayanim look at the case and they try to figure out who would it be more probable that Yaakov actually gave the property to. Take a look at the Rashbam. Yachloku. Rashbam says the Sveikahu. So again, I will say Rav's logic is split it. Right, split it, because at the end of the day, neither one has possession of the property. Both of them have this shtar. We're not sure who the owner is. Whenever you're in doubt, split it. On the other hand, Shmuel says, Shuda Dani, look at the Rashbam. Lo says, Sheyehe not eliv hadayonim sheyehe shehaya hanosin oavo o krovo yoser. Devadai lahu gamar va'aknilo. Va'aknilo yitnu karka. So this is actually very interesting. Shuda Dani means the Dayanim look at the situation. For example, so now here's what we know. Yaakov gave property, a gift to one of these two individuals. Is there one of them with whom he enjoyed a close relationship? Maybe one of them to whom he's related to. So Shuda the Daini essentially says we use judicial discretion to look essentially at circumstantial evidence, and can we come to some conclusion about who Yaakov would have given the property to. So we'll say, so now watch this. The Gemara is saying over here, let's go back for just a second. How do we get started today? So right, Reuven and Shimon are arguing, let's just keep it on a boat, right? Because a boat is a good metal to one piece, right? So Reuven says the boat is mine, Shimon says the boat is mine. Both are saying, again, they have years of chazaka. Neither has any type of proof. So what's the halacha? What did Rav Nachman say? Kol da'olam gvar. Let them duke it out, and whoever literally, again, is stronger will go ahead and win. Gemara says, 1 second, why? Why is this different than the case of Reuven and Shimon who show up in Beis Din, both with the same shtar matana? The document says, Yaakov has given me, right, the piece of property. And yet, so they're both coming with, it appears to be equal claims. And what do we do in that case? Well, it's machlokas, either Yachloku or Shuda D'Daini. But one thing is clear is, what are we not saying? Kol dalam gvar. So why is it that in the case of the two gift documents, either we're splitting the contested piece of property or judicial discretion? Why not apply these same rulings to the case ultimately again of the boat that we started the sugya with today? To which the Gemara says, no. Hasam leka lemekam alei de milsa, hacha ika lemekam alei de milsa. So I'll say this is actually quite interesting. Take a look at Rashbam for just a moment. Hasam. Now, literally translated, it means Hasam. In the case of the shtaros, there is no way for us to arrive at the truth. There's no way for us to arrive at the truth. In other words, there's no new information that is forthcoming. This is what it is. They both have documents laying claim to this particular piece of property. So therefore, there's nothing more that's going to evolve in this case. This is what it is. As opposed to the boat case, ultimately, again, it is possible that new information will be forthcoming. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at the Rashbam. Hasam, it's in the wide lines about 6 lines in. Hasam, the base shtaras, leka lemekam alo de milsa hayom o lemachar shiyavi ha'echad idim v'yitol shari hashtaros shavin bizmanon. So we'll say, at the end of the day, in the case of the two shtaras, there's no more new information that is coming our way. For example, va'afilu im yavo edim v'ya'idu zen nichtav v'nimsar b'boker v'zeh ba'erev halo in hakdama shows k'mosh b'rashon l'malo v'leka l'meimar shema zen nimsar tchilas yom. So we'll say, so the idea over here is, by the case of the shtaras, there's no new information that's forthcoming, right? What's going to happen? Witnesses are going to show up and say that Reuven got a shtar in the morning and Shimon got a shtar in the afternoon. We already established. We don't care about that. That doesn't make any difference to us. So there's no new information that's forthcoming. Because there's no new information that's forthcoming, we just need to go ahead and come to final resolution right here and be done with it. So what's the final resolution? Okay, so that's a machlokes. Rav says split it. Shmuel says go ahead and use judicial discretion. So therefore the Rashbam says, Hilchach Rav Amar Cholkin, Ushmuel Amar Shchuda Dedaini, Dehova in Levara, the Olam Hadin and Mishim Mishtadlin Bezin Medina Vedan. Also, the idea of here is in the case of the two shtaras, this is not an evolving situation. This is what it is. Look at the Rashbam of Al-Hacha. Bahai karka deleka lo shtar v'lo edim v'ika lamekam alei demilsam yavo v'ya'idu shamihu hilchach in kalomar chaluka b'shut. This is fascinating. In the case of the boat that we started with today, so I'll say, so what don't I have? There's no shtar and there's no eidos. Now, is it possible that this is a further developing situation? It is. Therefore, again, I will say, see, here's what's interesting. When you go ahead and you say, Yachloku, what do you know for sure? Right? When Beis Din says split it, what's clear? Right? Someone's getting something that doesn't belong to them. In other words, we'll say, Yachloku, as much as it's a compromise, because remember, you can't give the same thing to two people, right? So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, right? Somebody's the owner, somebody's not the owner. Now again, we're not claiming that anyone is dishonest over here. Maybe Yaakov made a mistake with something, right? But l'maisa, one thing is clear. Whenever you split something, that's called pshar, that's called compromise, that's not called din. That is if you think about it, it's an erroneous judgment. Because you're awarding something to someone that does not belong to them. So the Rebbe says, this is fascinating. So when there's no other choice because there's no more potential information forthcoming, okay, you do what you got to do. But in the case of the boat, right, how we started today's sugya, Reuven says it's mine, Shimon says it's mine. There's no eidos right now. It's possible that over time, more information is going to come to light. Because more information is going to come to light, essentially what Beis Din says is, listen guys, you got to settle this yourselves for now until someone is able to come back with further information. So to split that boat would be potentially, interestingly enough, upending the legal process. Or for that matter, again, to even use judicial discretion could be upending that process because this is a further evolving situation. Such a fascinating insight. Okay, let's go right there. So Gemara says, so one second, why isn't our case of Kol Da'alim Gvar different than the following situation? Disnan, listen to this, we've had this before. Hamachlif para b'chamar v'yalda, v'china mocher shivchasa v'yalda. So I'll say, so remember again, we've seen this case before. So that's in Bab Mitzia with the case of Chalipin. So remember again, I am exchanging my ox for Reuven's donkey. Right? So I have an ox, Reuven has a donkey, we're going to exchange. Now what happens with Chalipin? As soon as one of us takes possession of one of the objects, the other acquires the other one wherever it may be. Well, in this case over here, I'm acquiring a pregnant ox, right? Or I should say, my ox is pregnant. So now what happens? We do an act of chalipin, and then the ox gives birth, the cow gives birth. So the shaila is, did the cow give birth before the chalipin, and therefore again the offspring is mine, or did the cow give birth after the chalipin? In which case the calf belongs to Ruvain. In a similar case, right? I'm going ahead and acquiring a maidservant. The maidservant gave birth. Did she give birth before I acquired her or after I acquired her? Zeh omer at shalom acharti yolda. So of course, we'll say the machlokes is pretty predictable, right? So the owner of the cow said, it gave birth before we did the chalipin, and therefore again the calf is mine. Or the maidservant gave birth before I sold it to you, therefore again the offspring is mine. And the other party, the buyer, says no, the birth occurred after the sale. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Yachloku. So we split it. So we'll say, so once again, what do you begin to see? You see, this is what we tend to expect a little bit more. You begin to see a pattern that whenever there is what we call this was the famous statement of Sumchus. Remember what was Sumchus' famous like Maman Amoto Safek Yachloku, split it. So the Gemara says whenever you have a doubt about again halachic resolution of a case, it always appears to be that halacha l'maisa, so we split it. So what's going on over here? Why coming back to our boat case? Why don't we just say split it? To which the Gemara says, that's very interesting. Hasam, this case is different. Why is this case different? The case of the calf and the case of the maidservant. Hasam, lahai amud beis. Lahai isle drara de mamona, ulahai isle drara de mamona. I will say it is very different in the case, ultimately, again, of the maidservant and of the cow. I will say, here's what's fascinating about this case. Both parties have definitive ownership, right? If you think about this in just a moment, right? Let's say again, I have the cow. Reuven has the donkey, right? We're doing an act of chalipin. So one thing is clear: at one point, I'm the owner of the cow, and at the other point, Reuven is the owner of the cow, right? The shaila just is when did the birth occur? Same thing with the maidservant. At one point, I was the owner of the maidservant. Now Reuven's the owner of the maidservant. So we'll say that's a very different kind of case because there is absolute, clear, definitive ownership by both parties. What we're dealing with over here is a timing issue, not an ownership issue. So because we're dealing with a timing issue, and there's no way for us, again, in the absence of explicit testimony, there's no way for us to go ahead and figure out what the timeline is. Therefore, we'll say it makes sense yachloku. Why does it make sense yachloku? Because we both have definitive ownership. What do you do when two people both have definitive ownership, but there's a timing issue that you can't figure out? Yachloku. That's drara de mamona, means they both have a clear claim, or a clear ownership of the object. However, we'll say in our case over here, halcha idimar lo dimar, the idimar lo dimar. I will say it's actually fascinating. In our case of the boat, we just got started today. I will say, do both parties have ownership? No, one party has ownership. In other words, somebody owns it and somebody's lying. What's our problem? We don't know who. So therefore, I will say, we go back for just a moment. This is so fascinating. Sometimes in halacha, the machlokes is not who owns it. The machlokes is at what point did you own it? Right? Isn't that fascinating? Versus other cases where we're not sure who owned it. So the Gemara wants to make a suggestion as follows. When we know that both parties own the object in question, but rather it's a question of timing, and we have no way of ascertaining, then yachloku. But when we're not sure who actually is the owner, to say yachloku effectively what? Rewards an unscrupulous party. Because somebody's claiming ownership over something they don't own. Therefore, we'd rather go with kol da'alim gvar. So we'll say, so if you bring this full circle, what this really says is like this. Especially if you go with the Rush's idea. So right, when we have this case of Reuven shows up and Reuven says, the boat belongs to me. Shimon says the boat belongs to me. And neither could furnish any kind of proof. Bezin essentially says like this, look, we can't do anything. To split it would automatically means giving it to the wrong party. So instead what we're going to do is like this. Whoever is stronger takes possession of it. Let's go with the rush. Whoever is stronger takes possession of it. Taking possession of it means the halacha says, the din says it's yours. Right? Let's say Reuven gets it. Shimon, you want to extract it from Reuven? There's only one way to do that, and that's how? That's how? Proof. Proof, not force. Not force. You can't, after the initial call to Olam Gvar, that's it. So let's say Reuven, this happened on Tuesday. Reuven was the stronger party on Tuesday. It's Reuven's. Shimon cannot use force to extract from Reuven. The only way for Shimon to extract from Reuven, ultimately, again, is through witnesses. The Rosh says this is a din. And what's the logic? See, the halacha feels like this. The real owner is going to be much more motivated. A, to use force, right? To use force to get it because it's his. It's his. The person feels much more connected to an object that's theirs versus an object that's not theirs. So, especially if we're going to have to literally, again, duke it out a little bit, the Rosh feels the real owner is going to be more motivated. Plus, the halacha feels confident that over time the real owner is going to find the necessary legal proof. So because of that, we are confident that Kol Da'alam Gvar will lead to a shakeout of the right owner. We're not going to divide it because that would be incorrect. What are the cases? What are the cases in which we go ahead and divide things? So also that seems to be one of two cases. Either a situation where there's no more information that's going to be presented, and therefore again, Beis Din is kind of stuck. We have all the information we're going to have. Reuven and Shimon both show up with shtaros, right? That the property belongs to them. Okay, what are we going to do? So in that case, maybe we'll say yachloku. Or in a case where both parties have clear title, it's just, or I should say, had clear title. It's just a question of timing issue, right? The animal gave birth. When did it give birth? When I owned it, when I didn't own it. Those are cases where we're going to say yachloku. But in a case, ultimately, again, where it is a further developing situation and the full proof has not been presented, the Gemara will say, Kol Da'alam Gvar. All right, so we'll say it's really fascinating. Then I'll say now, by the way, so let me just read through the Shulchan Aruch, because we'll say this is a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. I didn't put this on the chat, I apologize. So listen to this. This is Siman Kuf Lamed Tes in Choshen Mishpat. Shnayim shechalukim badavar. Two people are arguing about an object. Vein shum echad mehem muchzak bo. I will say now, remember again, the chap over here is neither of them are holding on to the object, right? Because remember again, if one of them is holding on to the object and the other one, and they're both claiming the ownership, then what's the halacha? What's the halacha? Hamotzi mechaver alav haraya. Or shnaim ochsin batalis. Anytime you have two people in actual, so again, if you have a case of one person in physical possession of it and the other person claiming ownership, that's hamotzi mechaver alav haraya. Okay, I will say possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Whoever is in possession is considered to be the owner. Someone wants to come and challenge the muchzak, the person who's holding it. Okay, the burden of proof is upon you. Or two people are holding the object. They're both considered to be muchzak. That's shnaim ochsim batalis yachloku. So therefore, again, as Reb Shlomo already pointed out, the case over here is neither party is holding on to the object. So shnaim shechalukim bedavar vein shum echameh muchzak bo. Like the case of the boat where Reuven and Shimon are arguing over it, the Cholchad Amar Didihu. Each one is claiming the boat belongs to me. Kol Da'alim Gvar. Whoever is stronger, ultimately again wins. Va'oso shetigaber yodo tchilahu shalo ad sheyavi ha'acharaya. So we'll say here the Shulchan Aruch adopts the position of the Rosh that Kol Da'alim Gvar is a psak halacha. So therefore, again, whoever is stronger, Reuven is stronger on Tuesday, Reuven gets the boat belongs to Reuven. Only time that changes ownership is if Shimon is able to furnish proof. Even if Shimon becomes stronger on Wednesday and is able to extract it from Reuven, he's not allowed to do that. Right? Umiu shekinegdo yachal ashpio v'tzarach l'shavashu shalo. So we'll say. So by the way, what the Shulchan Aruch does add in is that they could force each other to swear. In other words, so if Reuven goes ahead and let's say Reuven is stronger and he gets the boat, Shimon could say, "Okay, Reuven, you were stronger than me. You got the boat. Now swear that the object is yours." So that's also a good mechanism, right? Because now that there's an oath involved, that hopefully also would help to be mavar, would help to clarify who the true owner is. So now that the Shulchan Aruch says, let's say again on Tuesday, Reuven goes ahead and gets the boat, he's stronger, so now the halacha is it's his until Shimon can furnish proof. Let's say on Wednesday, Shimon takes the boat back from Reuven. What does Beis Din do? In that case, interestingly enough, Beis Din will take it away from Shimon and give it back to Reuven. Get back to Reuven. So you see over here that Kol Da'alim Gvar ultimately is a psak halacha. Incredible. All right, so let's go back there. Another interesting case over here. Amin Ardoi. So I will say third line down from the top, 35b. The Nardoim said, Im ba echad min ashok vehechsik bo, ein motzin osan miyada. Wow, we'll say, watch this wrinkle over here. Reuven and Shimon are arguing over the boat, right? Reuven says it's mine, Shimon says it's mine. So what happens? Levi comes along. He's like, hey, I'm getting in on this. Right? So what does Levi do? Levi swoops in there as they're arguing about it, and Levi takes the boat. So what's the halacha over here? Ein motziin osam yado. Interestingly enough, we do not remove the boat from Levi's possession. The Tani Rabbi Chia, because Rabbi Chia said, Rashi says, the Rashbam says, saying like 3 lines down on the top, Bebeizim Yados Shazah Shlishi, Be'avagav Delota and Midi, Deshemagam Lebeis HaRishon Ein Lechelik Ba. Now, what's the logic over here? Why don't we take it away from Levi? Because the truth is, look, even though Levi is not making a claim that it's his, but the truth is, Rabbi say, it might also not belong to Reuven or Shimon, right? So because this is a case of where we don't know who owns it, what are you going to do? Like, just because Reuven and Shimon are making a claim doesn't necessarily make you any greater of the owner. So therefore, this is incredible. So if Levi comes along and Levi takes the boat, the Gemara says, you know what, we don't extract it from the hands of Levi. So the Gemara says, the Tana Rabbi Chia, Gazlan shal rabim, lav shmei gazlan. Someone who steals from the public is not called a thief. Now let's say yes they are. So what does it mean you're not called the thief? Look at Rashi, lav shmei gazlan. The kofo b'dayarim lahotzim yodo mashagazal. The idea is let's say Reuven steals from the public. So the problem just is you can't force Reuven to pay back. Why? Because you don't know who to pay back to. There's a concept that's called mamon she'in latovin, which is money that doesn't have a claimant. Right? So the problem just is the halacha is that when you steal something, you have to pay it back. If you don't know who to pay it back to, the problem is that Beis Din can't, right? There can't be a claim without a claimant. So the idea over here is, therefore Rabbi Chia says, if somebody steals from the public, they're not called the Gazlan. They are called the Gazlan, but we can't extract the money from the Ravashi. And Ravashi says, no. The Olam Shmei Gazlan. No, absolutely not. If somebody steals from the public, they're absolutely called the thief. Umay lo shmei gazlan. So I'll say, what does it mean that they're not called a thief? Shalonitan lehishavon. There's no ability, ultimately, again, to return it. So I'll say, take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam is right across. Umay lo shmei gazlan. Tikran Bichia lo lahakel alav bala pocham midashalim el lahachmir alav alomar de lo nitan lehishavon lo michbar bahashav din yodeh lemi yoshiv. So I'll say, remember again, the halacha is like this. If somebody steals and they want to do tshuva, so Baruch Hashem, there's a pathway to tshuva. What's the pathway to tshuva? Return the stolen object. The problem is, if you don't know who you stole from, then I will say tshuva becomes, not impossible, but tshuva becomes much more difficult. So the idea over here is, I will say, when Ravashi said, or when the Gemara said before, that, or Rav Chia said, that a gazlan shal rabim is not a gazlan. Somebody steals in the public, they're not a gazlan. It's not coming to take it easy on the person, it's actually coming to be machmir on the person. To say that, what does it mean you're not a gazlan? You're not a gazlan who has the ability to do tshuva, since you don't know who to give the money back to. So the Rashbam says over here, he goes on, lo nitan li shavon, lo michbar bahashava, deni yodea, lemi yoshiv. Deme'acha shebal yado tzarach lahashav lebailim, v'lolo tzimitachas hado lafkir l'shnei marishonim. Shabbos says, interestingly enough, it's just, first of all, just the halacha over here. When you steal something, so the halacha is, there is a theft, is what we call a lav hanitak la'aseh. It is a prohibition that is remedied by a positive commandment. So there's a prohibition to steal. The positive commandment is, return that which you stole. But it only works to return that which you stole if you know what? Who the victim is. The problem is if you can't identify who the victim is, then you have an inability to go ahead and rectify your misdeed. So therefore, when someone steals from the public, what does it mean they're not a gazlan? Of course they're a gazlan. What it means is, unfortunately, even if that thief decides to do tshuva, he can't do complete tshuva. Why? Because he doesn't know who to return the stolen object to. So too over here, right? Reuven and Shimon are arguing about the boat. Reuven says it's mine. Shimon says it's mine. We're about to apply kol da'olam gvar. Levi just comes back from Daf Yomi. He says I'm going to chaparayin on this because neither of them could really claim it. So Levi takes the boat. So now Rabbi says, so now what's the problem? Let's say Levi is a thief, right? Let's say it turns out that Levi's like, you know what? I actually don't own this. I don't own this at all. I just figured I'd get in on the action a little bit over here, but I do not own this. So I'll say, so now you say, okay, Levi, give it back. What's the problem? Who does Levi give it back to? So because we don't know who the defined owner is, ultimately, again, in this case, there's no way for Levi to really go ahead and return the lost object and rectify his misdeed. It's actually interesting. If you look at the end of the Rashbam goes ahead and he says as follows. He says like this. Amar Rabbi Levi kasha onshan shal midos me onshan shal arayos. Shabbos said this is a profound. We'll see this a little bit later on. That the sin of dealing with midos, weights and measures. But what's the right word? They're not good weights and measures. Faulty weights and measures. In other words, I'm a merchant, but my weights and measures are not calibrated correctly. So the Gemara says, being dishonest with weights and measures, get ready for this, is worse than immorality. Is worse than arayos. Right? Why? Both say it's very simple. Well, if I commit an act of immorality, I know what I did and I know who I did it with. So I have the ability to do tshuva. When you deal with faulty weights and measures, you're cheating the masses. And you have no idea who you have wronged. So therefore, I will say because of that, tshuva is so much more complicated. Fine. So also I see the idea over here is, so this is fascinating. So now when Levi comes along and Levi goes ahead and takes the object, the problem just is, even if he claims later on, I'm not the owner, halacha l'maaseh, he can't do tshuva, right? Or it's difficult to do tshuva because he doesn't know who to go ahead and return it to. So we'll say the Shulchan Aruch comments on this case as well. Listen to this. Shulchan Aruch writes, Bashlishi, Reuven and Shimon are arguing over the boat. Levi comes along and he v'chatfa b'tayna shomer shu shalo ve'en l'shayma achirim bo klum kevan shezehu mochsak ba'otoin shu shalo aval im chatfa b'lo tayna motzin osom yodo ve'en lo takana ad sheyashiv l'cho echad ve'echad. Now listen, now watch this. If Levi comes along and Levi seizes the boat, now if Levi suddenly claims that the boat is his, okay, we'll say, you could have a three-way kol da'olam gvar. You could do that. In other words, we've always positioned it as Reuven and Shimon, but the truth is you could have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. That works. So Levi takes it. What happens if Levi takes it without a claim? He doesn't claim that it's his. He just says, you know what? Hey, it's up for grabs. I'll take it. So we'll say, what's ta'alocha? Ta'alocha is motzino samiyah. The basin says, get out of here. We take the boat back from him. Rabbi said, but who do we give it to? Listen to this. This is incredible. Ve'in lo takana. Levi doesn't have the ability to be a Baal Tshuva. Ad sheyashiv l'chol echad ve'echad. Levi has to give a boat to Reuven and a boat to Shimon. Why? Because Lamai said there's no way for him to do proper tshuva without returning the object to both of them because he doesn't know who the rightful owner is. Shara inio de'alimi yashiv. Shabbos say, isn't that incredible? Isn't that absolutely incredible? Shabbos say, so Levi, you think you're a smart guy getting involved. So again, if Levi claims that the boat belongs to him, okay, then he's part of the kol da'olam gvar struggle. He's allowed to do that. But assuming he says, I just wanted to get in on this, it looked exciting, right? So the Maisa now, and he admits that he has absolutely no claim to it, so he's a thief, and he has to pay back that which he stole. Who does he pay back to? Listen to Shulchan Aruch says, both. Levi pays back both to Reuven and to Shimon. Crazy case. All right, let's go back to both sides. Let's go back. A lot to do on these short dapping, right? But let's go back. Not so short. Okay, Cheskasam Shalosham Yom Liyom. Should have started earlier. All right, so the idea over here is that the chazaka. Back to Mishnah, right? So the Mishnah said a chazaka is 3 years because we went through the whole list of all things that need chazaka for 3 years, and that chazaka I will say is 3 years of constant use, right? Constant and consistent use. Miyom liyom. On Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba says there is an exception to this rule. We'll say, now watch this. Let's say Reuven and Shimon, right? So now Reuven and Shimon in the field, and Reuven helps to load produce on Shimon's shoulder. When Shimon then claims that he is the rightful owner of the land, even if Shimon has not been there for 3 years, the fact that Reuven, who was the former owner, was helping to load produce onto Shimon's back is indicative of Shimon's ownership. Indicative of Shimon's ownership. So we'll say, so what Rabbi Abba is pointing out over here is the concept of chazaka being 3 years, right, with day-to-day use, is only if you don't have another act demonstrative of ownership. But if Reuven, the previous owner, was helping to load produce on the back of Shimon, who was now claiming to be the current owner, that's enough to establish Shimon's ownership even without 3 years of chazaka. So the Gemara says, Amar Zvid, 1 second. V'imtan v'amar leperos harativ ne'eman. Now Zvid says, but 1 second. If Reuven says, no, I'm the owner, I just brought Shimon in as a sharecropper, that's why I was loading produce onto his back, so Reuven is believed with that qualifying claim. But that's only if that claim was being made within 3 years. But if the claim was being made after 3 years, in other words, that Shimon's already been there for 3 years, then Reuven's claim is not believed. So the Gemara says as follows. Here's the problem. So we'll say, so now you really have a little bit of a problem. What's the problem? So according to Rabbi Abra, will say, anytime you see essentially Shimon working with the produce of the land and Reuven assisting him with that, that seems to go ahead and paint the picture of, Halacha seems to take that as a picture of Shimon's ownership of the land. So then how do you avoid a sharecropping arrangement becoming a platform for the sharecropper claiming to be the owner? Right? I was going to say, now you have a sharecropper who's been there for years. So you can claim, look, the owner, right, the former owner, Reuven, was helping me with the produce for 5 years. For 5 years. It's clear that I'm the owner. So how do you prevent a sharecropping arrangement from devolving into a claim of ownership? To which the Gemara says, Amar Lei, it's very simple. It's actually quite simple. I will say, what's the halacha? The halacha is that the owner, every once in a while, has to lodge a macha. And I will say, macha literally means an objection. But what it really means is a declarative statement of ownership. That, in other words, you have to be careful. When someone is working your land on a consistent basis, the owner has to be careful every once in a while to say, hey, chevra, want to invite everybody over for Kiddush at my field on Shabbos afternoon, right? During the afternoon, right? So in other words, so the Maisa, I want everyone coming over, right, to Kiddush on my field. So you got to be careful with that. Every couple of years, you have to go ahead and you have to make sure that you assert ownership. Now, the Gemara says this is clear. Listen to this. Dilo temahaki, because if you don't do this, hani mashkanta desura dekasa bo b'mashalim shanya alin tepok ara double kasef. So let's listen to this, because otherwise, remember a mashkanta desura case. Mashkanta desura, I lend Reuven $10,000. Reuven gives me a field, right? He says use the field for 10 years. Let's say if the value of the field is $1,000 a year, use the field for 10 years, and after 10 years, the debt is paid off. Now, both say, now that is a dangerous situation, because now what's going to happen? I'm using the field for 10 years. So what's to stop me after 10 years from claiming chazaka? Chazaka times 3, right? Chazaka. So the Gemara says, so how do you avoid that? So the Gemara says, because I could go ahead and very easily hide the loan document, and what? And I could claim the field belongs to me. So we'll say, and again, I'd be believed, because I've been using the field unobstructed without any objection for 10 years. And I could claim that Reuven sold it to me. I could just hide the document, hide the loan document, and again, I could establish myself as the owner with taina and chazaka. To which the Gemara says, could it be that the rabbis would institute something that could allow for a person to suffer such a loss? So again, I will say, here the shayla. So essentially, whenever you're letting someone else use your land for a protracted amount of time, whether it's sharecropping or whether it's mashkanta desura, how do you prevent the user from claiming ownership through chazaka? To which the Gemara says very simple. We'll say it's very simple, an objection. That again, if you are the owner of land and someone is using it for a prolonged amount of time, you as the owner every once in a while, again, we'll call it a macha, an objection. What it really means is every once in a while, you just have to make sure to make a declarative statement of ownership, right? I don't know, make an announcement, invite everybody over to your house, have a barbecue, have a kiddush, something that demonstrates your ownership and that prevents the person who's using it long term from asserting ownership. All right, boss, stop over for today. Shkoyach.